Hello. Hi, guys. Hey, Asian man. Glad you could join us. Hey, Dr. Cake. What's up? What's up? Dee. Hi, Dee. Welcome to the stream. Hey, Katie. I'm glad you could join. Nikki. What's up, Nikki? Hey, Losh. Glad you could join us today. Boom, 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 boom. Hold on. Give me a second. Changing some settings. Hey, what's up, Cupie? All right. How are you guys doing? How are you guys? We haven't seen each other for a week, so I want to catch up. I've been doing okay. What's up, Patrick? Hey. Yeah, I'm doing good. Doing good. Doing good. Doing my thing. Nothing's been happening because what do I do all day? I just stay home. I just stay home and work all day. What's up, Super Cow? Super Cow Productions. That's a funny name. Blah, blah, blah. Hey, Mercedes. Glad you could join us. All right. I got some food today. Look at this. Swiss roll cake. Or it's a green tea wheat cake. Wheat cake. All right. Let's see how this tastes. Look at this. Well, the camera makes it look a little red or brown, but it's actually green. It's actually a little bit green. You had Vietnamese tacos. All right. Did you like them? All right, let's do this. Let's reach the cream part. The green tea part is pretty good. What about the cream? There's not as much cream as I would like. As you can see, there's a little bit of cream. But I would love even more cream. Just pack it up in there. So you can really taste it. Not bad. It tastes like green tea. Kind of. A little bit. But yeah. Vietnamese food is okay, you guess? Oh, come on. Vietnamese food is the best. Pho is the best. Pho is better than ramen. Challenge me. Who agrees? Pho is definitely better than ramen, although ramen is good too. Yeah, Japanese people do seem to call their cakes wheat cake. Is it made out of wheat? Let's see. Let's see the ingredients. It's made out of wheat flour and a lot of sugar. And they put an egg in there. Oh my god. And then fat spread. Okay, we don't want to read the ingredients anymore. It's gonna make me sick. You love them? Good. Oh yeah, banh mi is also good. Oh, have you guys had those? If you haven't tried Vietnamese banh mi, let's look it up. Look at that. How delightful. Wait, no, not that. Let's see. How delightful does that look? That looks so good. I'm so hungry right now. You can't live without pho? Me too. If I can eat pho every day, I would. I probably would not get tired of it. Mm. Yeah, what would I like? If you could eat one food for your entire life, what would it be? What would it be? It has to be one food. Don't cheat and say one type of food, like Italian or Mexican or something. One food. What would it be? Mine would probably be pho. Be pho. With ramen, a close second, but pho is really good. You've never tried Vietnamese food in general. Well, you should, Cloud. Come on. You're missing out. Okay. Chinese noodles? Yeah. Not as good as Vietnamese. Gotta say. You guys know the feeling when you just when you take your clothes out of the dryer and it's all warm and stuff? That's what I'm feeling right now. I just got these out of the dryer. So I'm feeling very good. Feeling very, very warm. I'm about to fall asleep. You know what? I'm going to do that right now. All right. Bye. Thanks for joining, you guys. I'm going to go to sleep. Bye. No. You would just eat sushi? Can you really eat sushi every day? I mean, I like sushi, but I don't think I can eat it every day. Although there are a lot of different kinds of sushi, so I guess you get a variety. And with pho, you only get one kind of thing. It's basically the same. There's not much variety to it. Type in Maggie. Why? Oh, this? I know the soy sauce Maggie. Is that what you mean, or do you mean the Maggie masala? I haven't had this. This is Indian, right? Maybe I'll have to try it. Oh, it comes it comes in an instant noodles too. Masala Maggie. All right, all right. I will try it someday. Well, sushi is not okay. Sushi, I've recently learned that sushi is if you get sushi from especially sushi you get from like the 7-Eleven or like a gas station, they're not safe, man. Um I recently learned that, there are like worms or something that live in them. Probably not worms. I'm not saying this right. It's something. It's tapeworms? No, not tapeworms. It's some kind of worms that live in sushi. Okay? And it's relatively common. Of course it's not in every sushi box, but it's relatively common and people have gotten sick from it. All right? Really sick. Like you have to go to the hospital sick. Um yeah, because it's uncooked, right? And you keep it there for a long time. So sushi, especially the sushi in gas stations, so they just keep it there for a long time and these worms are in there. And they're not small. So you can if you look closely, sometimes you can see the sometimes people have seen like little white worms in the sushi. Yeah, and most of the time they're fine. You can probably eat them. Like most of the time, you can ingest them and it's fine. But sometimes they're parasites, so sometimes they really hurt you. Yeah, I've recently learned. So sushi is not safe. I think you have to get it from a clean source, but even the clean sources, they still exist. Sushi is good, but I recently found out that it's questionable. Uh, Oh, of course I've eaten cooked sushi. Kidding me? Indian food. You know what I like with I like butter chicken. Butter chicken. Indian. Yeah, this is my favorite Indian dish. Hmm. Eat it with a little rice, a little naan. Yeah, like this. Most sushi can have worms because of the fish. Right, it's the fish. Yeah, they're parasites. I guess they're parasites of the fish, and then they just I guess they can jump from fish to humans too. It's disgusting. What's so good? Alright, anywho, let's get oh, Alright, let's do a recap, okay, of what happened in the story last week. If you remember last week, our hero, Ling Hu Chong, and his new boob buddy, his new boob friend, his new best friend, sworn brother, Xiang Wenxian. They're at the residence of the four playfellows, and they're there sparring. They're in disguise, right? They're in disguise as other people. They're there and they're sparring with these with individually with these four brothers. Okay, and they're sparring because these four brothers want these kind of treasures that they had. Okay, and Xiang Wenxian had a bunch of treasures, and they're each tailored for each brother. Okay, the treasures are tailored for each brother because each brother has a certain interest, right, that they're very obsessed with, and they really want these treasures. So they're fighting for these treasures. If anyone in the residence can win a fight with Ling Hu Chong, then the brothers get the treasures. Okay, so now the fighting, and in the last week we had the senior brother of the four playfellows fight Ling Hu Chong using his zither. Okay, he uses zither to fight. Right, he's like, I guess the sound has chi infused in the sound. He's fighting, but the senior brother loses. Okay, so all four brothers lose, and no one can defeat Ling Hu Chong. So they're all defeated, and then Ling Hu Chong and Xiang Wenxian, they're about to leave, but then the four playfellows stop them. They're like, wait. Wait, come back. We have another challenger for you. Okay, so apparently there's another person in the residence that can challenge Ling Hu Chong, right? And so he must be like this super powerful person, stronger than the other four. Okay, to be able to defeat Ling Hu Chong. But they have a stipulation that everyone has to wear masks during the fight. Okay, so everyone that's viewing the fights and the two fighters, they have to wear masks. And that Xiang Wenxian could not attend the match. So Xiang Wenxian could not see the match. Okay, he could not be there. Now Xiang Wenxian, he didn't agree. Okay, he's like, oh no, you guys are gonna cheat. Okay, I don't want you guys to cheat my brother here. So I want to stay and watch the fight. All right. So we don't know who he's fighting yet. Okay. So who in that place he's fighting. And we don't know why they don't want Xiang Wenxian to be there. No, Wenxian's like, no, I want to be there, and he insists on it. So, but he insists so much that the senior brother was like, no, I can't let you watch the fight, and we're gonna call it off. Okay, so they call off the fight. They call off the match, and that's it. That's the end of the last chapter. Now I'm pretty sure the match is not called off. You wouldn't have all this build up just to call off the match. But yeah, that's what happened last week. How was that? That was a short recap. The social distancing sword fight. Yeah, you gotta wear a mask, okay? Can't spread all this COVID everywhere. All right. Let's go to the screen. All right. Chapter 20, Imprisonment, Part 2. All right, so now they have just called off the match. And then people are complaining. Brother Tong, you are really an oddball, you know that? Mr. Paint said irritably. Did you think that we would just all swarm forward and bully Brother Feng? Brother Feng is Ling Huchong in disguise. Well, your insisting on looking on the match has really cost us the match. Thank you for ruining the day for us. It took second brother a great effort to convince big brother and get his permission. You'd rather make more trouble, Mr. Baldbrush grunted. All right. I'll yield a step. I won't insist on watching this match, but you have to promise that it's going to be a fair match, and you won't deceive my brother Feng, Xiang Wenqian said with a grin. What kind of people did you think we were? We'd never deceive young hero Feng, Mr. Baldbrush and Mr. Paint cried out with joy in unison. I'll wait for you guys in the game room, Xiang Wenqian said, smiling. Brother Feng, I don't know what kind of clandestine tricks they are trying to pull here. You'd better keep a weather eye open all the time and be very careful. The Plum Manor only has gentlemen with lofty virtues. How can there be anyone resorting to trickery and swindle? Ling Huchong replied with a smile. Right on. Young Hero Feng is not like you, who measure others' corn by one's own bushel. Mr. Paints showed a broad grin. Xiang Wenxian took a few steps and then turned around and waved at Ling Huchong. Brother Feng, come over here. I'd better exhort you to some more so you won't fall for others' tricks, he said, at which Mr. Paint sneered but paid no attention. Big Brother Xiang is being too careful. I am not a 3-year-old kid. Even if they plan on fooling me, it's not going to be easy, Ling Huchong thought to himself as he walked toward Xiang Wenxian. Wenxian grabbed hold of Ling Huchong's hand, and immediately Ling Huchong felt a paper ball placed in his palm. A quick squeeze told Ling Huchong that there was a piece of hard object wrapped inside the paper ball. With a broad smile, Xiang Wenxian pulled him closer and then whispered to his ears. After you see that person, shake his hands and show your proximity, and then secretly place this paper ball together with the object inside into his palm. This is a very important matter. Don't take it lightly. Oh, what is this? When he said these words, the tone of his voice was very solemn, but he kept the broad smile on his face. The laughter at the end simply had nothing to do with his words. Mr. Blackwhite, Mr. Baldbrush, and Mr. Paint all presumed that he must have been ridiculing the three of them. Oh my god, you guys. Like, you're bombarding me with words. Clandestine? Clandestine means secretive, like secret. A bushel? A bushel is like a bushel. It's like a... Wait. Was he calling a bushel of corn? Measure others' corn by one's own bushel. So it's like a... I don't know. You know, you have a bunch of corn and then you tie it together in a bushel? Yeah. Alright, you wanna look it up? Look it up. Clandestine. Yeah, done secretively. Bushel. A container with the capacity of a bushel. There you go. Define paper? Oh, that's really hard, you guys. That's really hard. Paper? I don't know. Exhort? Oh, exhort. Where did he say exhort? Huh? Where? Oh fuck, oh fuck. Come over here. I better exhort you some more. Oh, what the hell does that mean? I'd better talk to you? Describe, give you advice. Give advice. I'm gonna say give advice. Come on. Come on. Exhortation. Strongly encourage or urge someone to do something. Do I get half points for that? Is that half? Half points, you guys? Let me know. So I gave him a paper ball. What's so funny? Young Hero Feng, no doubt, has excellent sword skills, but we haven't had a chance to check out the sword skills of Brother Tong, Mr. Paint challenged. My sword skills are most ordinary. There's no need to check it out. Xiang Wenxiang laughed out loud before waddling out of the room. Great, let's go see Big Brother again, Mr. Paint said merrily. The four of them entered Mr. Huangjong's zither hall once again. Mr. Huangjong did not expect their return and had already removed the mask from his head. Big Brother, we have finally convinced that Brother Tong. He has agreed to not watch the match, Mr. Black-White said. Good, Mr. Huangjong replied. Picking up the black cloth mask, he put it back onto his head. Oh, you didn't like my explanation of exhort? Okay, fine. No one is accepting that. All right, that's one song. Jesus Christ, we just started. Slow down, you guys. Just slow down. Where am I? Mr. Paint pulled out a drawer from the wooden cabinet and took out 3 black cloth masks. He handed one of them to Ling Huchong and said, "This one is mine. You can wear it. Big Brother, I am borrowing your pillowcase." Wait, no, wait. This is Mr. Paint. This one is mine. You can wear it. Big Brother, I am borrowing your pillowcase. He went inside the bedroom and soon returned with the green cloth pillowcase over his head. He's wearing a pillowcase. 2 holes had been cut off the pillowcase, showing his 2 eyes. Mr. Huangjong nodded his approval, and then said to Ling Huchong, "When you have the sword contest later, I think they mean contest. When you have the sword contest later, both of you will be using wooden swords in case inner strength is used, and put Brother Feng into disadvantage." Remember, they cannot use chi energy, right? They can only use sword skills. That would be great, Ling Huchong said happily. Second brother, bring 2 wooden swords, Mr. Huangjong said to Mr. Black-White, who, in turn, pulled another drawer from the cabinet and took out 2 wooden swords. Brother Feng, regardless of who wins this contest, will you please not mention a word to anyone else, Mr. Huangjong said to Ling Huchong. That's of course. I've said before that I didn't come to the Plum Manor to make a name for myself. Why would I want to go out and make it widely known? Besides, there's a high probability that I'll be losing this match. What's there to brag about? Ling Hucheng answered. Oh no, chat doesn't like that he removed his mask. But he put it back on right away, so it's fine. This is a socially distanced match. Well, that's not necessarily a sure thing, but I believe Brother Feng is a man of his words and won't let the word out. Will you please also not mention a word about anything you see afterwards? Not even to that Brother Tong. You know, do you think you can do that? Mr. Hongjong asked. Not even Big Brother Tong? After the sword contest, naturally he would ask me about the entire course. If I keep my mouth completely shut, isn't it rather harsh for our friendship? Ling Hucheng hesitated. That Brother Tong is a worldly wise man. Once he is made aware that Brother Feng has made a promise to me, he would understand that a true man's promise is worth 1,000 gold, and you must make good on your promise. Then naturally he won't force you to tell against your will, Mr. Hongjong said. That's true. I promise you, Ling Hucheng agreed. Mr. Hongzong cupped his hands together. Thank you for your understanding, Brother Feng. Let's go. Turning on his heels, Ling Hucheng began walking toward the outside. So when Mr. Paint pointed toward the bedroom and said, This way, Ling Hucheng was completely taken by surprise. How come we are going into the bedroom? He thought, but then he immediately came up with an answer. Oh, I see. The person who will have the sword contest with me is a woman. Maybe she is First Master's wife? Or a female relative? That's why they insisted on not having Big Brother Xiang watching the match by the side. They don't want her to see my face, and don't want me to see her face either, all because males and females should be distinguished. And First Master urged me again and again to not mention a word to anybody else, not even to Big Brother Xiang. If it weren't because it had something to do with a female, why would they be so serious? Once he figured this part out, all his suspicions suddenly cleared away. Then when he felt the paper ball and the small hard object inside his palm, he thought inwardly, it looks as though all Big Brother Xiang's careful and shrewd arrangement only are for one purpose, to enable him to pay a visit to that woman. Since he couldn't see her himself, he entrusted me to pass a letter and a keepsake to her. Then there must have been some kind of an obscure affair between them. Even though Big Brother Xiang is my sworn brother, the 4 manor masters have also been very kind to me. If I pass these along, it would really be unfair to the 4 manor masters. What should I do? Then he thought, Big Brother Xiang and the 4 manor masters are all people well above their 50s or 60s. That woman must have not been young either. Even if there was intertwined love relationship involved here, it had to be a past thing many years ago. I suppose passing this letter along wouldn't damage the woman's chastity. I like how they think that passing a letter would damage a woman's chastity. Unless that's a bad translation. While he was muttering to himself, the 5 of them had entered the inner bedroom. The arrangement in the room was very simply with only a bed and a small table. The gauze bed curtain hung above the bed appeared antiquated and showed slight yellow. On top of the small table sat a short zither, completely black, as though it was made of iron. Everything panned out as Big Brother Xiang planned. Alas, his love is so deep, how can I not help him fulfill his wish? Ling Hucheng thought. He always had a carefree disposition and never cared much about the Confucian code of etiquette. At the moment, he vaguely felt as though that woman had turned into his little apprentice sister, Yue Lingshan, who had married her junior apprentice brother, Lin Pingzhi, and he was Xiang Wenxian, who was trying every possible way to pay another visit to his little apprentice sister after several decades. When a meeting turned out to be impossible, he then tried to pass along a keepsake from the old days to merely express his feelings and slightly relieve the decades of love sickness. I think he's thinking way too hard into this. Define chastity? Well, chastity means virginity. But I guess this is not virginity. This is like more her reputation, as Lush says. But yeah, I think these days when we use chastity, it's like it's virginity. Yeah. Define zither? Oh, come on. It's a musical instrument, a string instrument. We know what that is. We've talked about it a lot. Maybe it was also because of this old lover of his. Big Brother Xiang broke away from the demon's cult and didn't hesitate to have a complete fallout with the chief and his fellow members in the cult, Ling Hucheng thought. Amid his reverie, Mr. Huangzhong had already lifted the beddings on the bed, removed the bedboard off the bed, exposing an iron plate with a copper ring attached to the top of it. It's under the bed. There's something under the bed. With a tight grip at the copper ring, Mr. Huangzhong pulled upward, and a 4-foot wide and 5-foot long iron board rose up slowly, revealing a large, rectangular shaped opening. The iron plate was at least half a foot thick and appeared to be extremely heavy. It's a secret door, you guys. After placing the iron plate on the floor, Mr. Huangzhong said to Ling Hucheng, "This person's residence is kind of strange. Brother Feng, please follow me." At those words, he jumped into the opening. "After you, young hero Feng," Mr. Blackwhite urged. Very surprised, Ling Hucheng followed suit and also jumped into the opening. What he saw next was an oil lamp hanging from a wall, which illuminated the surroundings indistinctly. Where he stood now seemed to be the very beginning of a tunnel. The beginning of a tunnel. Following behind Mr. Huangzhong, he walked forward, and soon Mr. Blackwhite and the rest of the people also jumped down, one after another. About 20 feet following the passageway, the tunnel seemed to have come to an end. Mr. Huangzhong took out a string of keys from his chest pocket and inserted one of them into a keyhole. Turning the key several times, he pushed forward. Amid a series of scrunches, a stone gate slowly opened up. Ling Hucheng found himself more and more astounded, and at the meantime felt more and more sympathy toward Xiang Wenjiang. They have locked the woman up in a dungeon. Then of course she was imprisoned against her will. These 4 manor masters all appeared to be men of kind-heartedness and justice. How could they have committed such a contemptible deed? He pondered. Yes, how could they have captured a woman like that? The tunnel kept descending deeper and deeper under the ground. By then, they were probably over 1,000 feet below the surface. The tunnel made a few turns when another gate met Ling Hucheng's eyes. I had thought that since the 4 manor masters are adept at music, gamesmanship, calligraphy, and painting, the 4 arts, they must have been persons of lofty virtues and poetic temperament. Who would have thought that they would have set up private prisons and imprison a woman in such a hellhole that's completely devoid of daylight and sunshine? Ling Hucheng felt resentments brewing inside his chest. When he first entered the tunnel, he had no intention to watch out for the 4 manor masters, but at the moment he simply couldn't help feeling his vigilance growing considerably. They couldn't defeat me in sword tests. Could it be possible that they have lured me down here so they could imprison me here? There are gates after gates inside the tunnel. No one would be able to escape, even if he was furnished with wings. That thought almost made him shudder. But with Mr. Huangjong in front of him, Mr. Blackwhite, and Mr. Baldbrush and Mr. Paint behind, and not a single weapon in his hands, he found himself quite helpless. Uh-oh. The third gateway was actually consisted of 4 separate doors. Behind the iron door was a wooden door covered with cotton wadding nailed onto the floor. Nailed onto the door plank. Behind the wooden door stood another iron door, behind which was another wooden door covered with cotton waddling. Why have they placed 2 wooden doors covered with cotton wadding between the 2 iron doors? They placed 2 wooden doors between 2 iron doors. Okay. Ling Huchang wondered. I got it. I suppose the prisoner has very formidable inner strength. The cotton wadding was used to absorb the fierce power from her palm and prevent her from breaking down the iron doors. For the next 100 feet or so, there were no more gates along the way. The oil lamps hung from the tunnel wall stood further and further from each other. In some sections of the tunnel, the oil lamps had long extinguished, leaving only complete darkness, and the pack had to feel their way forward for dozens of feet before seeing the next light. Oh, you think it's soundproofing? Okay. Maybe you're right. It's for soundproof. The further they went, the harder it was to breathe, Ling Huchang found. Moreover, the tunnel wall and the tunnel floor had turned awfully damp. Suddenly, a thought came to his attention. The Plum Manor sits on the bank of the West Lake. After walking for so long, we are probably deep underneath the West Lake by now. This person is locked up underneath the lake. Not only is it impossible for her to escape by herself, it is also impossible for others to rescue her. Because as soon as they dig open the tunnel wall, water from the lake would have poured in from above. Oh, this is a elaborate prison, you guys. After another 30 or 40 feet forward, the tunnel suddenly turned very narrow, and they had to bend their backs and to proceed forward. The further they went, the lower they had to bend their backs. Another 20 feet later, Mr. Huangjong finally held his steps and took out his flint to light up the oil lamp on the tunnel wall. What's wrong with me? Before long, another iron door came into view under the dim light, an iron door with a square-shaped opening 1 foot wide. Mr. Ren, Huangjong and his brothers have come to visit you. Mr. Huangjong spoke toward the square-shaped opening loud and clear. What? How could it be Mr. Ren? Shouldn't the person locked inside be a female? Ling Huchang was taken aback, but no response came from the inside. Mr. Ren, we are very regretful for not having sent our respects to you often. We have come today to inform you of an important matter. Mr. Huangjong spoke again. Suddenly, a hoarse voice bellowed from inside the cell. Important matter, my ass! If you got horse shit, unload it now. If not, get the hell out of here. Ling Huchang was dumbfounded. Instantly, all his previous fancy disappeared like mist and smoke. Not only did the voice belong to an old man, the words this man used were also so crude that they had to come from the mouth of a street vulgar. Yeah, of course it wasn't a woman. Before, we had always thought that when talking about exceptional swordmasters of our time, Mr. Ren would undoubtedly be ranked as the #1 on the chart. But how wrong we were. Today we had a visitor to the Plum Manor. The 4 brothers of us certainly were no match for him. Even Mr. Ren's sword art would pale into insignificance by comparison, Mr. Huangjong said. He is using mocking words to goad that man into entering a sword contest with me, Ling Hucheng thought to himself. The man burst into loud laughter. You 4 sons of bitches couldn't beat him, so you goaded him into sparring with me and hoped that I would take care of this tough enemy for you, didn't you, you scumbags? Ha 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 ha. What wishful thinking. Too bad that I haven't touched the sword for over 10 years and have completely forgotten all my sword skills. Why don't you just put your tail between your legs and get the hell out of here, you bloody bastards? Liu Hucheng gasped with astonishment. This man is so incredibly sharp-witted and could predict with miraculous accuracy. Just from Mr. Hongjong's words, he had figured everything out, he thought to himself. Big brother, in no way would Mr. Ren be this person's rival. This person said that nobody in the Plum Manor could defeat him, and he wasn't overstating the case. There's no need to talk further with Mr. Ren, Mr. Baldbrush said. Give it up. Provoking me won't cut it. Did you actually think I would do anything for you 4 bastards? The man named Ren snarled. This person has truly mastered the sword skills taught by the venerable Grandmaster Feng Qingyang of the Huashan Sword School. Big brother, I heard that years ago when Mr. Ren roamed the martial world, he feared neither heaven nor earth, except one person, Grandmaster Feng. Mr. Ren's nickname was something like flee at the sight of the wind, and the word wind here refers to the venerable Grandmaster Feng Qingyang. Is that true? Mr. Baldbrush asked. Okay, so this Ren dude, this old man, used to be some big shot in the martial world 10 years ago. But now he's trapped inside this prison, and he apparently his arch nemesis was Grandmaster Feng, which is Ling Hucheng's master, right? That taught him those sword art. What stinking fart! Rubbish! The man named Ren roared at these words. Third brother said it wrong, Mr. Paint joined in. Why? Mr. Baldbrush asked. You got one word wrong, Mr. Paint elaborated. Mr. Ren's nickname is not flee at the sight of the wind. It is flee at the sound of the wind. Now think about it. If Mr. Ren had already had Grandmaster Feng in his sight, the two of them couldn't have been very far from each other. And how could Grandmaster Feng have allowed him to get away? Only that as soon as he heard Grandmaster Feng's name mentioned, he starts running right away, restless like a cur straight from his pack. And hasten like a fish slipping out of the net, Mr. Baldbrush added. Is he able to keep his head on his neck all the way till today? Mr. Paints completed the sentence. The man named Ren seemed to be quite amused by these words and laughed out loud. You 4 stinking bastards found yourself driven from pillar to post by him, and then thought that you could beg me to take him on? Go jump in the lake. Did you think I am so stupid to fall for your tricks? Mr. Hongjong heaved a sigh. Brother Feng, he said. Brother Feng, he said to Ling Hucheng. This Mr. Ren here is already frightened out of his wits simply at the mention of the Feng in your name. There's no need for another sword match. We'll just admit that you are the #1 sword master in the entire world. Although Ling Hucheng knew that he had imagined everything wrong when he found out that the person was not a woman, seeing him stuck in the dungeon and obviously for a very long time, the feeling of sympathy soared in his heart spontaneously. From the tone of everybody, he deduced that this person had to be a very senior master with extraordinary kung fu skills. So when he heard Mr. Hongjong's words, he objected. First Master, it is not true. When Grandmaster Feng discussed sword arts with me, he held this venerable Mr. Ren in very high esteem. He said that in regard to sword masters of our time, the revered Mr. Ren was the only person he had admiration for, and that if I were lucky to meet this Mr. Ren someday, I must kowtow to him with utter respect and ask for his advice with sincere desire. These words sent Mr. Hongjong and his sworn brothers in complete shock, while that Mr. Run found himself on the high ropes. Laughing loudly, he said, Little friend, what you said is very correct. Mr. Feng Qingyang is no ordinary swordsman. He, and only he, is capable of recognizing the subtlety of my sword arts. Grandmaster Feng knows that he is here? Mr. Hongjong uttered. His voice quivered, and Ling Huchong almost felt he sensed dread in his voice. It seems that there is some history between these guys. Grandmaster Feng thought that the revered Mr. Run had retired to a scenery spot in a famous mountain. Ling Huchong decided to run wild with his made-up story. During the time when he trained me in the art of the sword, he had frequently mentioned about the revered Mr. Run. He said that the only purpose of training in these sword moves was to fight revered Mr. Run's students. If revered Mr. Run had never existed, then it would have been completely unnecessary to learn these very complicated sword moves. By then, he had become very discontented with the four masters of the Plum Manor, thinking that the man named Run must have been a champion of the past, and his captivity in the dark and degrading prison must have resulted from some sort of a despicable plot in secret set up by the four manor masters, so even his words carried such ridicule and sarcasm. That's right, my little friend. Feng Qingyang really has some good insights. You got the better of these folks in the Plum Manor, didn't you? The man named Run asked. Well, since my sword skills were taught by Grandmaster Feng himself, then unless it was you, Mr. Ren, or unless it was a student of yours, ordinary people, of course, wouldn't stand a chance, Ling Huchong replied. By saying these words, he had publicly denounced Mr. Hongjong and the bunch. The more he felt how dark, damp, and gloomy the dungeon was, the angrier he was at the four manor masters. He had only stayed here for a very short while, and was already feeling awfully uncomfortable. But they had locked this senior master in this appalling place, a place completely unsuitable for human habitation, for God knows how many years, and that was just atrocious. As the moral indignation grew rapidly inside him, he had no more scruple with the choice of his words, thinking that even if worst came to worst, and they killed him on the spot, he wouldn't have cared anymore. When Mr. Hongjong and the rest of the manor masters heard these words, they of course felt much snubbed, but they did lose their matches and had nothing to contradict. Brother Feng, what are you? Mr. Paint muttered, but after Mr. Blackwhite gave his sleeve a good tug, he held his tongue. Very good, little friend. You've really given me a vent to my anger. Now tell me, how did you beat them? The man asked. The first person from the Plum Manor to have a sword match with me was a friend named Ding Jian with a nickname called something like Straight Line Lightning Sword, Ling Huchong said. His sword moves are flash, without substance. He doesn't have any true skills, and all he does is try to scare people with his sword flashes. You don't have to use any moves sparring him. Just place your blade there, and he'll send his fingers, wrists, or arms onto your blade and have them cut off himself, the man said. Feeling utterly astounded, the 5 listeners cried out in unison. What? Was I not right? The man asked. You are absolutely right. It's almost like you have seen it with your own eyes, Ling Huchong answered. Oh, he's showing off. He's flexing. He's flexing his understanding. Define snub? Snub is like insulting someone. Like, yeah, like an act of showing disdain or lack of cordiality. Insult, slight, affront, humiliate, rebuff. Great. Then did he cut off his 5 fingers or a hand? I turned my sword blade a little bit. I turned my sword blade a little bit, Ling Huchang said. Wrong! Wrong! Why be so nice to your enemy? You are too kind-hearted, and one day you'll for sure get the worst of it. So, who was your second opponent? It was Fourth Master. Fourth's sword skills, of course, are better than that straight-line fart sword, but not by much. Good one, Mr. Ren. After he saw you defeat Ding Jian, I bet that he'd be using that unique stun of his, which he prided himself on. What was that sword art called? Oh yeah, it's called the Splashing Ink Slicing Hemp Sword Art, with something like White Aurora shooting the sun, or Mounting Flood Dragon and the Soaring Phoenix, or something like Willow Wickers fluttering in the breeze. Hearing that the man was able to spell out his prided sword moves with such accuracy, Mr. Paint found himself in an even bigger shock. Fourth Master's sword art was actually quite clever, except that it has too many flaws when he attacks, Ling Huchang said. Ha ha ha. Old Fang's student certainly has a few tricks of the trade. You hit the mark with a single comment, and have identified the deadly flaw in his splashing ink, splitting hemp sword art of his. Within this sword art of his, there's one move which he always thought to be the most formidable killer move in the entire art, called Jade Dragon Hanging Upside Down, where he would bring the sword swishing down from above with sheer force. If he indeed launched this sword move against a student of Old Feng, then all the opponent had to do was to slice the long sword upward, right next to his sword blade, and all his 5 fingers would have been sliced off, and the blood from his hand would splash everywhere like splashing ink. It's called the Splashing Blood Slicing Fingers sword art. Ha ha ha! Senior Master can predict with miraculous accuracy. I did defeat him on this move exactly as Senior Master has described, but I have no grudges against him. Besides, Fourth Master had feasted me with great wines and treated me very kindly, so in regards to the 5 fingers, there's no need to slice them off, Mr. Ling Huchang said. By then, Mr. Paints' face looked as though someone had painted it scarlet and violet. He was well worthy of the name Mr. Paint, except that his head is covered by a pillowcase so no one could actually see his face. Bald-headed third uses a judge's pen. His handwriting is no better than a 3-year-old kid, yet he loves posing as a lover of culture and even claims that his kung fu contains conception from famous calligraphers. Little friend, I am sure you understand that combat with your enemy is an important matter that distinguishes between life and death. Even if one wrestles with all this strength, he is not guaranteed a triumph. Where would he find such leisurely and carefree mood to be particular about the style of the inscription or script? Only when your opponent's kung fu is far inferior to that of yours, you might be able to tease him or play him. But if the two sides' kung fu skills are comparable, and you still try to write words with your judge's pen, you are only offering your own life with both hands to the mercy of your enemy. Senior Master's words are very precise. The third master is a bit too casual when he fights others, Ling Huchang agreed. Well, they're totally insulting all these 4 masters. When Mr. Baldbrush first heard the man's comments, he was furious. But the more he thought about these words, the more he found them to be in the right. It was a lot of fun when he permeated calligraphy in his judge's pen moves, but the power from his weapon did decrease dramatically after all. If it weren't because Ling Huchang held back, even 10 Mr. Baldbrush would have been slain easily. At that thought, he broke into a cold sweat. To beat bald-headed third is as easy as a walkover, the man said with a laugh. His judge's pen kung fu used to be quite worthy, but he is too big-headed and would rather add some kind of calligraphy in his kung fu. When elite fighters exchange moves, the outcome is determined from very minor aspects. Treating his own life as a joking matter, it is really a miracle in the martial world that he was able to stay alive till today. bald-headed third, for the last 10 years you just holed up and didn't go around the martial world, did you? Mr. Baldbrush let out a snort, but didn't answer, when in fact a chill just shot down his spine. He is absolutely right. If I had been wandering in... Wait, Mr. Baldbrush. Oh, I think I messed up their voices. He is absolutely right. If I had been wandering in the martial world in the last 10 years, there's no way I'd still be alive today, he thought inwardly. Seconds Kung Fu with his magnetic iron game board is genuine talent, though, the man continued. Once he starts his attack, each move becomes faster than the previous one, and the attack would swamp his opponents like a gust of blizzard or a sudden downpour. It is indeed not easy to withstand for ordinary martial artists. Little friend, tell me how you broke his attack. Well, I certainly dare not to use the word break here, only that as soon as the fight broke out, I initiated my attack as well as the second master and was able to force him into defense, Ling Hucheng replied. Excellent. How about the second move? The man asked. With the second move, I used a forestall attack again, and second master took a defending stance again. Excellent. Then how about the third move? With the third move, I was still attacking, and he was still defending. Incredible. In the old times, Black White was indeed awe-inspiring in the martial world. By then, he used a regular iron board, and if anyone could withstand his 3 consecutive strikes, Mr. Black White would spare his life. Later, he changed his weapon to the magnetic iron game board and gained great advantage in his weapon, consequently became even more capable. Little friend, you were able to force him into 3 consecutive defending moves. That's excellent. So, on the 4th move, how did he counterattack? On the 4th move, again, I attacked, and the second master defended. Is Old Feng's sword art really this brilliant? Even though to defeat Black White is not difficult, you were actually able to force him into a defending stance again on the 4th move? Huh, excellent. On the 5th move, it must have been him who attacked. On the 5th move, the situation remained the same. Oh. The man named Run fell silent. Only after a short pause did he speak again. After how many of your attacking moves, Black White was able to counterattack? Well, I don't remember how many, Ling Hucheng answered. Mr. Black White picked it up and said, Senior Master, young Hero Feng's sword skills are so brilliant that from the beginning all the way to the end, I was not able to attack, even once. After 40 moves, I knew it was after over 40 moves, I knew I was no match for him, so I stopped the match and admitted my defeat. Only by then did he speak to the man named Run, and the tone of his words was unexpectedly respectful. Ah! The man cried out loudly. This is ridiculous. Although Feng Qingyang is an exceptional talent in the sword branch of the Huashan Sword School, Huashan Sword Branch's sword art still has its limits. I never believed that someone from the Huashan School can attack Black White with over 40 moves and not let him return even a single blow. Revered Mr. Run is really flattering me. A junior, this brother Feng here has well surpassed his teacher. The level of his sword skill has far exceeded the extent of Huashan's sword branch. When we look around the entire martial world, only someone like the revered Mr. Run, someone to be considered the mightiest fighter of our time, is capable of giving him some pointers, Mr. Black White said. Mr. Huangjong, Mr. Baldbrush, and Mr. Paint all sounded very rude, while Mr. Blackwhite spoke with the utmost esteem. But whether they were provoking words or flattering words, their intentions remained the same. That is, to let this Mr. Run have a sword contest with me, Ling Hucheng thought to himself. Huh! Your fawning stinks just the same, the man reprimanded. Huang Zhong's moves and techniques are only on par with that of Black White's, but his cultivation and inner strength is not bad at all. Little friend, is your inner strength stronger than him too? I had incurred prior injuries and had lost all my inner strength. That was why First Master's 7-string invisible sword had no effect on me at all, Ling Huchong replied. The man burst into loud laughter. Ha ha, that is very interesting. Little friend, I think I'd like to check out your sword art, he said. Ah, they're gonna fight. Senior Master, please, don't fall for their scheme. The 4 playfellows of Jiangnan want to goad you into having the sword match, but they actually have ulterior motives, Ling Huchong urged. What ulterior motives? The man asked. They made a wager with a friend of mine that if anyone in the Plum Manor can defeat my sword art, then that friend of mine would have to lose a few things to them, Ling Huchong explained. Lose a few things? I suppose they must be rare music scores, game manuals, or probably authentic calligraphy books or paintings from ancient times, the man said. Whoa. How did he know that? Senior Master can foresee with divine accuracy, Ling Huchong said. I only want to see your sword art. We are not having a real fight. Besides, who said I'd be able to defeat you for sure? It's practically certain that Senior Master would prevail over me, but we must ask the 4 Manor Masters to give their words on one condition, Ling Huchong said. What condition? The man asked. If Senior Masters defeat the longsword in my hand and win those several treasures for them, the 4 Manor Masters must open the cell door and let Senior Master leave this place, Ling Huchong explained. Little friend has a very fantastic idea. Did Feng Qingyang teach you that? The man grinned. Venerable Grandmaster Feng has no idea that Senior Master is imprisoned here, and I had absolutely no clue about it as well, Ling Huchong said. Young Hero Feng, Mr. Blackwhite suddenly called out. Whoa. Wait. Young Hero Feng, Mr. Blackwhite suddenly called out. What is the name of this revered Mr. Run? What nickname has he gained from fellow martial masters in the martial world? Which school was he headmaster of? Why is he locked up here? Did the venerable Grandmaster Feng tell you anything about it? Facing these 4 sudden questions from Mr. Blackwhite, that's right, because he doesn't know anything about this guy. All of it, for some reason he's on his side, but what if he's a really bad dude? Facing these 4 sudden questions from Mr. Blackwhite, Ling Huchong found himself tongue-tied. Before, when Ling Huchong had attacked 40 or so moves in quick succession, Mr. Blackwhite had been able to ward them all with 40 or so defending moves. But now, when Mr. Blackwhite suddenly asked him 4 questions in quick successions, as though he was attacking with 4 moves, Ling Huchong couldn't even fend off any one of them. After some indistinct falters, he said, well, I haven't heard any of those from Grandmaster Feng. I really don't know the answers to those. Right. I bet you don't have a clue, Mr. Paint joined in. If you had known the cause here, you wouldn't have wanted us to release him. If this man gets to leave this place, then the entire martial world would have been turned upside down. Countless of people would die under his hands, and there will never be another peaceful day. There will never be another peaceful day in the entire martial world. That's correct, the man guffawed. No matter how daring the 4 playfellows of Jiannan are, they never have the guts to let me out of the prison cell. Besides, they are only following orders to watch over this place, nothing more than 4 puny prison guards. How could they have the authority to release me? Little friend, this request of yours has really elevated their status too much. Ling Huchong kept his silence, thinking, I had the least bit of idea about any of these implications. No wonder only a few sentences into it I've already given myself away. Brother Feng, Mr. Huang Zhong said. When you saw how gloomy and damp the dungeon is, I naturally you sympathize with this Mr. Ren. Therefore, felt resentment toward us four brothers. That only shows the that only shows the errant tree in your heart, and I don't blame you. But did you know that if this Mr. Run returned to the martial world, just in your Huashan school, at least half of your people would have been wiped out? Mr. Run, am I correct on that? You are correct. Is Huashan School's headmaster still Yue Buchun? He is a complete hypocrite. Too bad that first I was too busy and then fell for a secret plot afterwards. Otherwise, I would have tore his hypocritical mask off a long time again, the man scoffed. Ling Huchong felt a big shock in his heart. Though his master expelled him from the Huashan school and also proclaimed to the entire world, making him the public enemy of all orthodox schools in the martial world, he always recalled with emotion the kindness his master and master wife had shown him, bringing him up and treating him like their own son. When he heard the man named Brun fouled and insulted his master, he couldn't help but roar. "Shut up! My But he immediately swallowed the rest of the word down, remembering that Xian Wenxian brought him to the Plum Manor. He had been introduced as the uncle master of his master. Before knowing whether these people were good or evil, it would have been unwise to reveal the truth. The man named Run, of course, did not know the true meaning behind Ling Hucheng's roar. While laughing loudly, he continued, "Within the Huashan school, there are, of course, people I think much of. Revered Feng is one. You, little friend, is another. And there is another junior of yours called something like Jade Maiden of Huashan, Ning something. Oh, I got it. Her name is Ning Zhongzhi. That little girl is actually straightforward and heroic. She is a talent. What a pity it is that she had to marry that Yue Buchun like a beautiful flower stuck on a pile of cow dung." Wow, he really doesn't think much of the master. Ling Huchong didn't know whether to laugh or to cry when he heard the man referring to his master wife as a little girl, so he didn't respond. At least he had favorable comments for master wife and called her a talent. "Little friend, what's your name?" the man asked. "My surname is Feng, and my first name is Zhong," Ling Huchong replied. "Anyone with the surname Feng in the Huashan school can't be bad. Come in here. Let me check out Reverend Feng's sword art," the man said. He had been referring to Feng Qingyang as Old Feng at first, but then he changed it to Reverend Feng later. He must have been quite pleased with the way Ling Huchong talked and turned courteous toward Feng Qingyang in his words. Ling Hucheng's curiosity had been growing constantly for a good while and was very eager to meet this man, to take a look at how he looked and to find out how great his kung fu was. "My shallow sword art is only for bluffing some people on the outside, but in front of senior master it is nothing more than a laughing matter. But the Reverend Mr. Ren is a man with exceptional abilities. Since I am already here, how can I not pay a visit?" he said respectfully. Mr. Paint moved closer and then whispered to his ears. "Brother Feng, this man's kung fu is very bizarre, and the methods he employs are also very sinister. Please be very careful. If anything doesn't feel right for you, come back out immediately." His voice was very low, but the caring and concern obviously came from complete sincerity. "Fourth master is treating me like a true friend," Ling Hucheng thought inwardly. "I ridiculed him with my words just a moment ago. Not only didn't he bear grudges at all, on the contrary, he sincerely cared for my safety." At that thought, secretly, he couldn't help but feel ashamed. Come in, come in. What are they talking about on the outside, talking so furtively? Little friend, the four clowns of the Jiannan are no good apples. All they want is to have you fall for their tricks. Nothing good will come out of their mouths. Don't trust a word from them, the man said loudly. Ling Huchong found himself wavering, not sure which side he should trust and which side he should help. That seems to be a sentence that describes his entire life. Mr. Hongjong took out another key from his chest pocket and then turned it several times after inserting it into the keyhole on the iron door. Ling Huchong had thought after he unlocked the door, he would go ahead and push the iron door open, but quite to his surprise, Mr. Hongjong stepped back and Mr. Blackwhite stepped forward, who also took out a key from his own chest pocket, inserted the key into the keyhole, and then turned a few times. After him, Mr. Baldbrush and Mr. Paint each took out his key and turned the key in the keyhole, respectively. 4 keys. Ling Huchong suddenly realized this senior master's status must have been very prestigious. The 4 manor masters each is holding a separate key, and it takes all 4 keys combined to be able to open the iron door. The 4 playfellows of Jiannan are as intimate as real brothers, and the 4 of them are almost like one unity. How come they don't even trust each other? Then he thought, a moment ago that senior master said that the 4 playfellows of Jiannan are only acting under orders like prison guards. They have no authority to release him at all. Maybe it was the same person who appointed them the guard duty, who ordered them to each hold a separate key. The turning sounds of the key were strident and unsmooth. Obviously the lock was covered with rust, and it has been a long time since the iron door was last opened. Yeah, Mr. Paint seems like he does really care for Ling Huchong. Yeah, I like that guy. He likes wine and stuff. He seems like a fun dude. What does furtively mean? Oh, furtively. Like 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 secretively, like a little squirrel. Squirrely. Like secretly talking to him. That's furtive. Like secretly with quick movements like a squirrel. Squirrely. I love the word squirrely. In a way that attempts to avoid notice or secretively. Okay. There you go. There you go. There you go. After Mr. Paint turned his key in the keyhole, he grasped onto the door handle, shook it a few times, and then pushed hard. Amid the loud scrunching sounds, the iron door opened for a few inches inward. As soon as the door opened, Mr. Paint leapt backward. Mr. Hongjong and the other 2 manor masters also leapt back many feet. Instinctively, Ling Huchong also took a few steps back. All right, let's take a break. All right, before he steps inside and see what happens. Let's take a 5-minute break. I'll be right back. Oops.
Honey, what I think you need is a socket wrench.
I played JV basketball.
I'm sorry. I don't think it looks right.
The song was so short that it stopped, and then we had ads on YouTube. All right, let's see what's happening. Take another bite of this. Do you guys have a feeling that shit is gonna go down? Stuff is gonna go down. Closing my door. Closing my door. That song was from the Smiling Proud Wanderer mobile game? Oh. That's a lot of songs, doesn't it, that game? Cinnamon roll? It's well, they call it wheat cake. Wheat cake. Not cinnamon, it's a green tea. Look at that. Oh yeah. It's pretty good. All right. Little friend, they are afraid of me. But why would you be? The man laughed loudly. Right, Ling Huchong answered, and then stepped forward. Reaching his hand out, he pushed on the iron door. The hinges on the door were so rusted that he pushed very hard and only was able to open the door 2 feet wide. Immediately, a strong, stale smell filled his nostrils. Wait, efferent? What the hell is efferent? Did we ever have that word? No, we didn't. There's no efferent. Streety McMeady? That was not a word that was said. Oh no, now I lost my position. Ah! Where were we? Oh no. Oh no, I skipped. Oh no, I'm past it. Pink on yellow paint and by the phone to oil. Oh, here it is. You saw it. Well, I did a search and it wasn't there. So I don't know what you mean. It wasn't there. What about errant tree? So, errant tree. I'm pretty sure it's you guys know the knight errants from medieval times, to where they would wander around having adventures, and they're all like chivalrous and all about chivalry and honor and stuff like that, and they would like rescue fair maidens and stuff. Those were knight errants. So errantry is the act of doing those things. So like wandering around, being chivalrous, I guess, being a chivalrous knight. I think that's what it means. What? Wait. It doesn't exist? Not a word? Errant tree is not a word. Huh. Well, I'm thinking it's the noun form of this. So like here, traveling in search of adventure. Errantry. Oh, here it is. Oh, Google Dictionary did not have that word. Bad, Google, bad. The quality, condition, or fact of wandering, roving in search of chivalrous adventure. Oh. I kind of nailed that on the head, didn't I? Damn. I'm a genius. Oh, that was the one that you meant? Okay. Gotcha. I was like, efferent? What the hell is efferent? Alright, back. Where are we? Mr. Paint stepped forward and then handed him 2 wooden swords. Ling Huchong took the wooden swords and held them tightly with his left hand. Brother Feng, take an oil lamp with you. Mr. Baldbrush suggested, taking an oil lamp off the wall. Ling Huchong took the oil lamp with his right hand and then entered the room. The prison cell was about 10 foot long and 10 feet wide. A narrow and long bed lay next to a wall, on which sat a man. Long whiskers and masked aches covered the man's face. What the hell's masked? Ah, crap. Shouldn't have said that. Making it impossible to see his look. The long beard under his chin almost reached his waist, but his hair, beard, and eyebrows were jet black, without even a grain of gray. It is so fortunate of me to be able to meet with the Senior Master Run today. I hope I'll be getting many good advice from you, Ling Huchong bowed. Don't be modest. I'll have to thank you for coming here to dispel my loneliness, the man grinned. You flatter me. Should I put the oil lamp on the bed? Ling Huchong asked. Fine. Fine, the man answered, but didn't reach out to get the lamp. This prison cell is too small to have a sword fight here, Ling Huchong thought to himself. He walked next to the bed and then set the oil lamp down. Expediently, he gently tucked the paper ball and the hard object inside into the man's palm. The man was slightly taken aback, but still took the paper ball, and he asked in a loud voice, Hey, you 4 chaps! Are you coming in to watch? Masked? Yeah, what is masked? I'm hoping that was a typo. Long whiskers and masked aches cover the man's face. Masked aches? What are masked aches? Like the mast of a ship? That doesn't make sense. Masked. I'm gonna say masked means deep. No. That's aches. How does an ache cover the man's face? Maybe they mean like deep lines? I don't know. I'm gonna say deep. That sounds not right at all. What? No, these don't match at all. Nuts. It's not nuts. I think that's a typo. None of these definitions fit. Masked aches. Masked aches. Oh, you think it's mustache? Oh, long whiskers and mustaches and a mustache. Okay, got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Like masked aches? What the fuck? All right, you guys, come on. This is an important part. So look, he gave the guy the paper ball thing. He walked next to the bed and set the oil lamp down. Expediently, he gently tucked the paper ball and the hard object inside into the man's palm. The man was slightly taken aback, but still took the paper ball, and as he asked in a loud voice, Hey, you 4 chaps, are you coming in to watch? The space is too limited. There's no room, Mr. Hongjong replied. Suit yourself. Little friend, shut the door, the man said. Yes, Ling Huchong answered, and then shut the cell door. The man stood up, and immediately a series of slight clanking sounds clanged from around his body, as though many thin steel chains were clanking against each other. Reaching out with his right hand, he took a wooden sword from Ling Hucheng and heaved a long sigh. I have not touched a weapon for over 10 years. I wonder if I still remember the sword arts I learned many years back. Ling Hucheng noticed a steel circle around his wrist, and a steel chain attached to it, connected all the way to the wall behind him. Another glance quickly confirmed that there were also steel chains shackling the man's other hand and both of his ankles to the wall behind him. Then the four walls grabbed his attention. Under the dim light from the oil lamp, they shined in dark green. Turned out the four walls were all made of pure steel. He figured that the chains and shackles on the man's wrists and ankles must have been made of pure steel, or else the chains this thin wouldn't have been able to restrain a top-notch kung fu master like him. The man gave the wood sword a swing. The swing came from above to below, and the sword merely moved about 2 feet in the air, but suddenly loud buzzes echoed in the small room. Senior Master, what incredible strength, Ling Hucheng praised. The man turned around, and Ling Hucheng could vaguely see that he opened the paper ball, saw the hard object wrapped inside, and began reading the writings on the paper. Taking a step backward, Ling Hucheng intentionally blocked the square hole on the iron door with his head, so no one from the outside could see what the man was doing. No. The man's body trembled slightly, as though the writings on the paper had greatly agitated him, and the steel chains clanged again and again. But only moments later he had already turned around, and sharp stares shot out of his eyes. Little friend, although my hands cannot move freely, it is not necessarily true that I cannot win over you. As a young and green junior, I, of course, is no rival for a senior master, Ling Hucheng said. You attacked Black White over 40 moves in succession, and didn't give him any chance to launch his counterattack. You want to give me a try? The man demanded. Now the fight starts. Please, forgive my audacity, Ling Hucheng replied, and then thrust his sword at that man. The move he used was none other than the exact same first move that he had used in the match against Mr. Blackwhite. Excellent, the man commended, and thrust his wooden sword at Ling Hucheng's left chest at an angle. It was a defending move that carried strong offense, and an offense move backed by strong defense at the same time. A swift and fierce sword move indeed. Mr. Blackwhite watched the fight through the square-shaped hole on the iron door. As soon as he saw this move, he couldn't help but shout, Brilliant move! Today is you four chaps' lucky day. I am going to really widen your view now, the man chortled. By then, Ling Hucheng's second sword attack had arrived. The man swung his wooden sword outward and pointed it at Ling Hucheng's right shoulder. Another smart move that had strong defense and strong offense. Ling Hucheng's heart thumped. It felt as though there was not a single flaw in the man's move that he could explore to thrust forward and attack the opponent's vital points. Having no alternative, he leveled his own sword in a block, tilting his sword tip, implying a possible attack toward the opponent's lower stomach, a defending move that also carried much offense. Very clever move, the man smiled, retracting his sword and swept it to the side. The two of them went back and forth, and within just a few moments had already exchanged 20 moves or so. But during the entire course, the two wooden swords never even touched each other. Oh, well, that's the wrong sound effect. The man's sword moves had such complicated variations and movements. Ever since Ling Hucheng had learned the Dugu 9 swords, he had never run into an opponent so formidable and powerful. It wasn't that his opponent's sword moves were void of flaws, but because the moves fluctuated so unpredictably, he simply couldn't attack the flaw or crack within. But he sincerely followed the gist in Feng Qingyang's teaching, which was to conquer a move with no move, and shifted his moves at will. Although the sword-breaking stance was only one stance in the Dugu 9 swords, it it was a combination of the essentials in all the sword arts of various schools and factions in the world. So even though it was no move, when in fact it built its foundation on all the moves in the sword arts. The man also noticed that Ling Huchong's new sword moves emerged one after another, and every change seemed completely new to him. Relying on his abundant experience and profound kung fu skills, he was able to resolve them one after another. But after over 40 moves, he could already feel a slight sluggishness in his sword movement. Slowly, he attached more and more inner strength onto his wooden sword, and every swing of his sword seemed to have created vague echoes of gust and thunder. But no matter how resourceful the opponent's inner strength was, when those moves met the profound and subtle sword techniques of the Dugu Nine Swords, they all came to nothing. Only that the man's outstanding prowess in inner strength and his superb ingeniousness in sword techniques had become simply inseparable from each other. Several times the man had already forced Ling Huchong into extremities, where Ling Huchong should have had no choice but to throw down his sword and submit. But Ling Huchong would always be able to suddenly come up with some bizarre moves, which not only rescued him out of the dead-end position, but also enabled him to use the opportunity to launch his counter blow. The brilliance of these moves was simply unimaginably queer. Mr. Huangjong and the rest of the 3 manor masters crowded over the iron door and watched through the square-shaped hole. The hole was so small that there was only a space for 2 persons to watch at the same time, and even with the 2 persons watching, one had to watch only with his left eye, while the other one watched only with his right eye. So 2 of them would watch for a while before moving aside to let the other 2 watch for the next while. At the beginning, the 4 of them gasped in admiration when they watched the marvelous sword moves exchanged between the man and Ling Huchong, but soon afterwards they could no longer understand the brilliance in the two's sword moves. Sometimes after Mr. Huangjong saw a move, he had to ponder upon the subtlety within it with all his might. Only after a long contemplation was he able to comprehend. But by then, the 2 men inside had already exchanged another dozen moves, and he pretty much had been turning a blind eye on how those next dozen moves had panned out. After he finally got over the initial amazement, he couldn't help but wonder. It turned out that Brother Feng's sword skills have reached such an extreme. When he fought me earlier, he probably only utilized 30 or 40% of his true skills. I had thought that my 7-string invisible sword from my zither failed to subdue him only because he had no inner strength. But even if he does have resourceful inner strength, my invisible sword wouldn't have had any impact just the same. All he had to do was to launch 3 quick attacking moves, and I would have no choice but to drop my zither and admit defeat. If it had been a fight for survival, he could have easily blinded my eyes with the jade flute in his first move. Mr. Huangjong, of course, had no idea that he had really overrated Ling Huchong's sword skills. The Dugu Nine Swords was a kung fu that turned more powerful when the opponent was stronger. If the opponents were not adequate, then the brilliant techniques of the Dugu Nine Swords would not have been applicable. The man Ling Huchong was fighting today was a world-shaking figure in the entire martial world. The aptitude of his kung fu had reached a level that's well out of people's imagination. Only with the stimulation from his extraordinary kung fu were the many profound and subtle aspects of the Dugu Nine Swords able to make the most revealing performance. Even if Dugu, seeking a loss, could come back to life, or if Feng Qingyang had come himself, he would have found great joy fighting such a capable opponent. To successfully use the Dugu Nine Swords relied on not only a very good understanding of the sword techniques and variations, but also the intelligence of the practitioner, where the second part played even a bigger part. Once the practitioner had reached a stage where he could extend at will with no restraints and no boundaries, then the more intelligent the practitioner was, the more brilliant the sword art would become. And to him, each sword contest would have been like a poet composing a wonderful poem. after following his greatest inspirations. After another 40 moves or so, Ling Hucheng found himself fighting with greater and greater facility. Many of the clever knacks he used were ones that even Feng Xingyang had never mentioned before. On encountering the brilliant sword moves from his opponents, the Dugu Nine Swords spontaneously originated corresponding moves to counter. At the moment, fear had been completely cleared off his mind, or in another word, he had been concentrating wholeheartedly in the art of the sword, having no leisure for any feeling of fear or delight on his mind. It seems like he's learning as he's fighting. He's becoming more powerful. That man changed into 8 different styles of advanced sword arts in succession, some uninterrupted and unbroken, some delicate and swift, some others firm and forceful. But regardless of how he changed his moves, Ling Hucheng was able to handle the change with ease, as though these 8 sword arts were ones he had been trained to spar against ever since he was young. The man suddenly swung his sword in a block and yelled out loud, "Little friend, who on earth taught you your sword art? I don't think Reverend Feng has that capability." Ling Hucheng was slightly surprised. If this weren't taught by Reverend Feng, who else could it have been? He uttered. "That is true. Why don't you try this sword form of mine?" the man demanded. He let out a long howl and suddenly brought his wooden sword swishing down from above. Ling Hucheng thrust out in a tilted angle and forced him to withdraw his attack to block. The man roared again and again as though he had gone completely mad. The more pressing his roars were, the faster his attacks became. Ling Hucheng didn't find anything peculiar about this sword form, but each of the thundering roars made his ears buzz uncomfortably and made him feel annoyed and perplexed. He tried to hold his calm with difficulty and continued breaking the opponent's attacks, but suddenly the man let out a earth-shattering and heaven-battering howl. Ling Hucheng felt a loud ring in his ears, as though his eardrums had been shattered by the thunderous shock. A strong dizziness quickly consumed him, and before he knew it, he had collapsed to the floor and lost his consciousness. Done. Did he finally lose a fight to this dude, this Mr. Run dude? All right, that's it. You guys like that? You guys like that chapter? That's a good chapter. We meet a very powerful dude, someone who finally defeated Ling Hucheng. It seems. Too short. Was that short? I guess it was. Yeah, the chapters are getting shorter. We had really long chapters, like some time ago. This one, like 30 was pretty long. Who lost consciousness? Ling Hucheng. Our hero lost consciousness. If you can't beat him with your sword skills, just yell a bunch. Yeah. He yelled and made everyone collapse to the floor. More cliffhangery, eh? Hey. Oh, looks like next one will be another long chapter. Look. It's not split up into parts. So it seems to be a long chapter. All right, karaoke time. Only one song this week, huh? Only one song. So give me a song in the chat. Just give me a song you want me to sing. And if I know it, I'll sing it. Let me go pee, okay? I'll be right back. I want to see some songs in the chat when I come back.